around the Beltway to around the world. This is the Daily Drum on 96.3 WHUR. Plus, now every Wednesday on WHUT TV, bringing you the information you need that matters most. Better together. Here's Harold Fisher.
Good evening. This is the Daily Drum for Wednesday, February 7th. Here's what's happening. The Montgomery County School Board begins the process of adopting an Inspector General's report on staff complaints. In today's meeting, Board President Carla Silvestri laid out next steps.
First, the board will oversee and ensure that all corrective actions recommended by the OIG are taken. The board will update the OIG every 90 days.
The IG's report detailed the school system's failures regarding sexual harassment and bullying complaints that led to the firing of a high school principal last month and resignation of the superintendent last week. A D.C. man with a history of racist tirades against black women at his apartment building is facing sentencing on Friday. 33-year-old Georgy Iskranov was convicted last week of a hate crime. In 2020, he spat in the face and yelled racist epithets at a black woman neighbor at the Waterside Towers on the Southwest waterfront. D.C.'s Attorney General is also suing the management company of the Waterside Towers for not protecting the woman despite months of complaints. Well, the DMV is coming up big for a 35-year-old man killed in a D.C. carjacking spree. Alberto Vasquez was shot to death during the same violent rampage in which former D.C. election official and Trump staffer Mike Gill died. Vasquez left behind two young daughters. A GoFundMe page has raised nearly $50,000, more than doubling the initial goal of $20,000. Well, Governor Wes Moore delivered his second annual State of the State address today, speaking to a joint session of the Maryland General Assembly. Moore said the state of our state is strong and that his primary focus will be public safety.
Our administration will continue an all-of-the-above approach to public safety. We will listen to law enforcement, and we will listen to the communities that they protect. We will listen to states' attorneys, and we will listen to the public defenders. We will listen to elected leaders, and we will listen to local advocates. We're up against a new challenge, and we need to come up with these new solutions.
He also teased tomorrow's release of Maryland's first state plan in more than a decade. Tomorrow, the Supreme Court will hear the Colorado ballot case that could dramatically impact the 2024 presidential election. The High Court will consider whether Donald Trump is ineligible for a second term in office. Back in December, the Colorado Supreme Court ruled Trump could not appear on the state's ballot because he violated the insurrection section of the 14th Amendment. Here's a look at our weather now. Tonight, partly cloudy and cold with lows in the 20s. Tomorrow, cloudy but dry with highs in the mid-50s. Well, coming up, the D.C. crime bill, the Michigan mother convicted in a mass shooting committed by her son, and some of the other top stories of the week. We are at the Reporters Roundtable. Lines are open. Give us a call. 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. Insight is next on WHUR and WHUT TV.
On the go and on demand, WHUR and WHUT are with you. Download the WHUR app today to get full access to shows, playlists, and our latest contests. To access WHUT on demand, download the PBS app and make Howard University Television your station. Catch up on our WHUT original productions anytime, anyplace on YouTube at WHUT TV. WHUR and WHUT, better together.
You may have noticed something different on Monday nights at 8 p.m. on WHUT. We like to call it Must See DMV. As part of our mission to amplify your stories on your station, you'll get to see some of the finest works from our creators who call D.C., Maryland, and Virginia home. It's Must See DMV, Monday nights starting at 8 p.m. right here on WHUT, Howard University Television.
Going beyond the headlines to the deeper issues. 96.3 WHUR and HUR Voices, Sirius XM Channel 141. This is the Inside segment where your questions and comments matter at 202-319-7810. Join the conversation.
Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR, WHUT TV, Sirius XM Channel 141 and 96.3 HD2. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. We are at the Reporters Roundtable discussing some of the top stories of the week. Tonight, more on the D.C. crime bill. The DOJ proposes changes to state-run crime victims' compensation. We're going to talk about that Michigan mother convicted in the mass school shooting committed by her son. The D.C. divorce waiting period is over. And do you support beer and wine sales in Maryland grocery stores? My guests tonight are Panama Jackson, podcaster and columnist at the Grio, and Sam P.K. Collins, staff writer for the Washington Informer. Lines are open. Give us a call at 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. You can X me at HFisherWHUR, or you can find me on Instagram at Harold T. Fisher. Guys, thank you so much for joining the conversation. I appreciate it.
Peace and blessings.
Glad to be here.
Well, let's hope for peace right now. And we certainly do need blessing, Sam, when it comes to the omnibus crime bill. First reading yesterday, it was passed unanimously, of course, with the present vote of Ward 8 Councilmember White. But a lot of people still are not happy about it. As a matter of fact, last night on this program, we interviewed Sheena Berry. She is a Ward 2 ANC commissioner, and among other things, she shared this with us.
The small details of this bill are so important. They're so important to Black communities, to brown communities, to parents of children, to our future. So I just hope that when they reread this bill that they consider us. Because I know if young white children were committing these crimes, they would not be profiling young white children. They would break their necks to protect young white children.
Is she right, Sam?
She is right. And in terms of the tiny details in the bill, up until the actual council legislative meeting, council members were on the dais tinkering with the tiny details. When it comes to defining mask, Councilmember Henderson, with the help of Councilmember Trayon White to some extent, they narrowed the definition of a mask in the anti-masking provision. When it comes to pretrial detention, Kenyon McDuffie successfully got an amendment introduced that made pretrial detention temporary and also mandated a study. When it comes to drug-free zones, once again, talking about detail, Councilmember Robert White, as he has done on a couple of occasions, really forced his colleagues to think about whether or not D.C. already has drug-free zones. Are people already going to be arrested for selling drugs and using drugs outside? What is the need for drug-free zones? And also when it comes to a provision that penalizes violent crimes around rec centers, what exactly constitutes as violent crimes? If people are engaged in a game of basketball, does that constitute as something? Does that have the same effect as a murder, for example? These are the small details that people are talking about, and the bill is about 90 pages. It's a combination of 12 bills, and because it's wrapped into an omnibus package, it doesn't necessitate hearings, public hearings in which people can weigh in on them. The argument being that the individual bills were already weighed on. So that was the first strike that was brought against D.C. Councilmember Brooke Pinto. She and Mayor Bowser have been very, very adamant about the bill being passed in its original form. But like I said, council members were up on the dais. They were in the council breakfast. Amendments were coming in left and right. They were just tinkering with it. And I predict some more tinkering come May 5th or even before that, because the bill, will be passed. It is an election year. We've seen some of the more progressive council members take the middle of the road. But it's a question of how balanced will it be? Will it be extremely punitive, or will it be some balance inside the bill?
But, election year or not, businesses are voting with their feet. They're leaving H Street. The Wizards, the Caps are trying to leave D.C. And a lot of people are sick and tired of being sick and tired, Panama. this is the kind of legislation where I don't think anyone is going to be happy.
No, but to be fair, most legislation never leaves everybody happy anyway.
Right.
I'm with Sam though. A lot about the details. So I have not read as in depth as obviously you have about everything that's in the bill. I've seen a lot of the big picture items that have showed up, right? The things that people are upset about. And reading the small pieces that I have, I've seen a lot of places that allow for way too much ambiguity in how things are carried out. And I think despite the fact that I am also sick and tired, I'm a resident of this city, I am concerned for my wife and my children. I'm concerned about being carjacked myself. I do think about these things, right? At the same time, I do not enjoy a space that allows the police a lot more leeway in how they are able to enact certain ideas or certain ways of policing us. Like, that is always going to be a problem. That is never a solution to a problem. The solution is never to give the police a lot more leeway in how they can discern or decipher how a law can be interpreted when dealing with the public. And from what I read, and if I'm wrong about that, please feel free to correct me. I feel like that's some of the things that I've read that are in there that would give anybody pause who has interactions with the police that don't go well, that historically don't go well for us. And the idea that there's more latitude even if it's under the guise of preventing crime or getting criminals off the street, I feel like the solution isn't necessarily here, even if they're trying to move in a direction that does the thing for businesses. I don't know. From what I read, I don't feel more comfortable with what I saw.
And I think this is, whether it's, secure DC or make DC safer, or it could be called the somebody please do something bill, and I think that's where we are, because
yes.
Whether it's your mom and pop businesses that are trying to keep it together on H Street, or your luxury midtown boutiques, or or the folks who are just trying to go to work every day. And like you said, they're concerned about the carjacking. One thing I will say, for example, that Kenyon McDuffie spoke about yesterday was the collection of DNA for arrested suspects. That is it's a bridge too far.
Yeah, I didn't get to touch on that yet. That there was vigorous debate around that. Councilmember Pinto brought up numerous states that are doing similar things. A lot of these states are based in the southern United States. They're pretty conservative. There were also questions about what necessitated that. She brought up instances where repeat sexual offenders, because their evidence was not because their DNA was not collected, they were not caught until the third time. But even so, with that, Councilmember McDuffie, Councilmember Lewis George, and others were very, very adamant once again about just civil liberties and about intrusion on people's rights and people's, just people in general.
The unintended consequences is what you're talking about. All of that stuff, the unintended consequences of that kind of thing. I mean, you even if you have the right idea, but you're not thinking it all the way through, is exactly where that ends up. And you can understand the do something. I get it. I want something to be done too. I'm tired of being concerned about this, right? Mm-hmm. I'm tired of being concerned about my family's safety, my own safety when I venture out, or having to even think about that when I venture out. Making sure, I hope I make it home safely. The conversations we have to have as family. But there are bridges too far, as you said, and thinking about, you always wonder why people who are in these positions, they want to do something, but why is it these things end up going so extreme and tend to be favoring what nobody else on the street, well, certain communities on the street, it's like, this is a bad idea. These are not the right ideas. But it's like, well, we got to do something, so we got to try this extreme stuff. And which is what that sounds like to me.
202-319-7810. 202-319-7810. We are at the Reporters Roundtable talking about some of the top stories of the week. If you have a comment or a question, give us a call. We've got a lot to address tonight. We're going to be talking about that Michigan story in just a bit. So Stan calling from D.C. hang on. But I do want to go back to something that that you were just talking about, JP. And this is the thing that I find the drug-free zone thing. I know we have the spirit of the law and the letter of the law, but isn't DC supposed to be a drug-free? Isn't everywhere supposed to be a drug-free zone when you're talking about illegal controlled substances?
I mean, even when it comes to marijuana decriminalization, that's an issue in itself because there's so many gray areas when it comes to the shops, when it comes to how much people can carry. So with the drug-free zones, the rationale once again, and I'm sort of questioning the whole intent versus impact thing. Some part of me in my reporting really points to people really wanting so-called offenders to suffer really bad consequences. But to your original point, drug-free zones, they exist to some extent in the sense that that it is illegal, but the issue, according to some residents, is that police officers are oftentimes not encouraged to stop open-air drug markets, that they're sitting in their cars as drug trades are taking place on Kennedy Street, along Georgia Avenue, along some parts of Ward 8, Martin Luther King Avenue, for example, and the other cross streets. That's the rationale behind bringing back drug-free zones. And a lot of this came from residents' frustrations about having to walk past these open-air drug markets and, like they said, being scared for their lives or just being concerned about it. So it all comes down to police officers, which brings me down to my last point for the time being. The D.C. Council, Chairman Mendelson in particular, as well as Charles Allen, they are pointing the finger at convictions. So they're, the mayor and the council have been pointing back and forth about who's responsible for crime, but the D.C. Council is pointing at MPD, and they're also pointing at the U.S. Attorney, Matt Graves' office, because D.C.'s conviction rate, or even like crime closure rate, is low. So we're talking about 2 out of 3 cases not being solved at one point.
But, and this is for both of you, but I'll start again with you, Sam. And this issue kind of came up last night where, and I was also, by the way, talking to Monica Hopkins with ACLU DC. And one of the things that comes to mind is this situation didn't happen overnight. And, and obviously, COVID did play a role in it. But I have always maintained in these conversations that COVID didn't create crime. It may have exacerbated the situation. Technology with cars has created this because, way back in the day, you didn't have to carjack someone if you stole a car because you could get in the car or you could hotwire the car. But cars are now so technologically advanced, and Kias and Hyundais, they had that fixed. So now the reason there's so many carjackings is because otherwise you can't steal the car unless somebody's already in the vehicle. Okay, but with that said, what we talk about what's wrong with the bill, but everybody's complaining about they don't like it. But what's the other side of it? What can work?
There are a couple elements that work. I wouldn't say work. Work is subjective, but elements of the bill that are a bit more proactive. So like when we talk about coordination of government services, when we talk about grants given to businesses along certain streets to fight crime, when we talk about credits for people who get cameras in front of their houses, there's certain aspects of the bill that are more proactive, that are less punitive to an extent. When we talk about, even when it comes to Department of Corrections, inmates or residents for that matter getting licenses or training in food preparation, or just even getting fresh food, so like there are certain elements of the bill that are more proactive and more geared towards government coordination of services and crime prevention, and even with the OUC, Office of Unified Communications, with them finally, on the road to transparency as far as how many people can actually call 911 and have their calls being answered. So there are elements that have not been getting attention that are that would put DC on the road to transparency. It's just that these other elements have caught so much traction because we don't want to go back to the 90s. Real quick,
The same question for you, Panama. What do you think can work? Because I do want to take a phone call real quick as well.
I'm going to defer to. I'm not familiar with everything's in the bill. I will say what I do think part of the reason why elements like that might not get as much attention, on its face, it doesn't sound like it solves anything, right? Like prevention is not the way that people view change. Prevention, stopping this, there's like, I don't want to worry about this. I don't want to worry about getting carjacked. What are you going to do to the people that carjack? We often think punitively, even if we don't acknowledge that we do that. We're thinking, make the people that do the bad things suffer so that other people don't do it, as opposed to stopping these things from happening in the first place through programs, community programs, through making people feel like it's not worth it to them. They don't have to do these things. So
yeah. Let me go back to the phone lines. 202-319-7810. Roderick calling from Maryland. Thanks for calling, Roderick. What's on your mind?
I was just going to make a comment. Oh, good evening, gentlemen.
Yeah, go right ahead. You got a minute. Go ahead.
I was just going to make a comment about the DNA. The DNA being taken on a simple arrest, I don't agree with. But DNA is taken in the prison systems in the DMV after conviction.
Yeah.
So they passed a law a long time ago for that. And if you notice that a lot of crimes have been solved by serial killers or whatever by DNA taken. And that's all I was going to say.
Okay, Roderick, thank you so much. 202-319-7810. 202-319-7810. Terry calling from Maryland. Thanks for calling, Terry. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I was calling about, why don't they have more programs leading up to helping the parents out? The parents are the ones that should be held responsible for a lot of things, so they need to actually give them quality care and stuff as far as good parenting skills, because that's what's going on right now. There's been a lot of bad parenting, if you ask me.
Yeah. I mean, and you do make a point, and after the break, we are going to talk about the bad parenting story out of Michigan. It's historic. Has never happened before. A precedent setting, and who knows what impact that may have on the rest of the country, particularly here in D.C. Thank you so much for your phone call. Need to take a break, but don't forget you can hear every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast. It's on our website, WHUR.com. And don't forget to download the 96.3 HD2 app on your smartphone and hear the program live in its entirety. If you're on the phone, Stan calling from D.C., Daryl calling from Maryland, stay with us. We will be taking your phone calls. 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. I'm Harold Fisher. John Mons is next with the original Quiet Storm. That's on WHUR. This conversation continues in just a few seconds. Stay with us.
WHUT is dedicating weekdays at 10:30 a.m. to bring you the best of our locally produced series, like our Arts and Artists show, Artico, our energetic music series, DMV The Beat.
Get Out. When I wrote that song, we were fighting.
And stories highlighting the endurance of the human spirit with legacy.
He used to say to me all the time, when I die, the newspaper's yours.
So remember, tune in weekdays at 10:30 a.m.
Howard University Television PBS and WHUR 96.3 are joining forces Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. as we bring you Harold Fisher and the Daily Drum live as we take you inside the stories of the DMV. We've got the experts and the people that matter most to help you make informed decisions for your family and your community. That's the Daily Drum, Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. live on WHUT and WHUR. Better together.
Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM Channel 141 and WHUT TV. I'm Harold Fisher. We are at the Reporters Roundtable discussing some of the top stories of the week. My guests are Panama Jackson, podcaster and columnist at the Grio, and Sam P.K. Collins, staff writer for the Washington Informer. Lines are open at 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. You can certainly X me at HFisher, WHUR, or find me on Instagram at Harold T. Fisher. I want to talk about this story out of Michigan, this precedent-setting conviction. A mother convicted of 4 counts of manslaughter after her son shot and killed 4 classmates, her 15-year-old son shot and killed 4 classmates at Oxford High School in Michigan. After the verdict was read, the foreperson of the jury shared these few thoughts.
It was very difficult. It wasn't an easy decision. Lives hung in the balance, and we took that very seriously. The thing that really hammered it home is that she was the last adult with the gun. And that's where I'll end my comment. Thank you.
The mother, Panama Jennifer Crumbly, according to the prosecution, ignored her son's mental health issues, and not just her, but the husband, who is going to be tried separately for the same crimes. They provided him with a gun. They ignored his mental health challenges. It seems to be a pretty slam dunk thing, as one of the previous callers said. Bad parenting.
I'm a parent. I like to think that I'm a good one, and I hope that I never have to deal with this type of situation. Slippery slope is all I can think of. The slippery slope of wading into these waters where we do blame the parents in a punitive, correctional fashion. And, these are conversations I think we all have. I mean, what we heard about the caller is not something that's unique, right? A lot of people think, blame the parents. This is the parents' fault. The parents should be doing better. The parents put the gun in their hand. That is the parents' fault. They're negligent. All these things happen. I think I struggle with this one. Like, I genuinely struggle because I don't know where I sit. I have sympathy for understanding. Sometimes your kids do things. Is it my fault if my child makes a really bad decision? If I put the gun in their hand and then sent them off to do the thing, of course, then I'm connected to that crime. And I think that's where it sounds to me like this is kind of where this falls. But I still just worry about the precedent this sets for parents being held accountable. And I think she's going to get like 15 years or something like that, potentially. I think that's like what's on the table for her child's decision. But as most things, it's more nuanced than that. It's not as cut and dry. But I struggle. I really do struggle with this, just on its face.
I agree. And I would hate to see what would happen if a black mother and a black father is in a similar situation or sitting in front of a jury, because, racial bias is definitely a real thing. As far as the mental health aspect, again, let me preface this by saying that I don't know too much about the young man's mental health record, but, when it comes to crimes like this, I'm often worried about mental illness being weaponized, as I don't want to say cop-out, but just mental illness being weaponized, and us not looking at these instances as somebody being meticulous or being very intentional about, committing these heinous acts. And, that to me is also a slippery slope. I've seen mental illness being used numerous times to excuse behavior like this that has been executed against, children, men, women of various races, but black people in particular. That is definitely my concern. But going back to the part about the mother being found guilty, I do see this, like Panama said, being a slippery slope. I see, similar things happening when Child and Family Services gets called when children act up. I see black families in marginalized communities being penalized for just being poor. And mind you, this is a white woman, but again, oftentimes we do get the short end of the stick in this country, as it relates to race and economics. So, I definitely see that.
Let me go to the phone lines. 202-319-7810. Stan calling from D.C. Thanks for calling. What's on your mind? Stan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. What I was calling about was the piggyback on what my brother's talking about now, about the case in Michigan. If people don't wake up in Washington and other major cities, they're going to have a lot of parents sitting up in court facing jail time because of their child's behavior.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Stan. I appreciate it. So let me offer this. In this particular case, the prosecution offered evidence that the son was crying out for help.
Okay.
And that the mother and the parents had ignored it. The father had also given him a 15-year-old a semi-automatic handgun for his birthday, for his 15th birthday. I understand gun culture in this country, but gun culture notwithstanding, there were just too many pieces of evidence presented by the prosecution, and even the mother said, when the son said, paraphrasing, I don't feel well. I feel like I'm going to hurt someone. And her response from the stand was, I don't believe my son would do this. And then he did this. That's problematic. Now, if we go back to, a couple of months ago here in D.C., where we had the 12 and the 13-year-old who carjacked or attempted to carjack the federal police officer in Chinatown, and the 13-year-old was shot and killed. The 12-year-old's mother turned him in. And this is the nuanced part of it, where, should that mother be responsible for the actions of her 12-year-old when she was working, as opposed to, that old saying, some of you may not be old enough to remember this. It's 11 o'clock. Do you know where your children are?
I'm definitely old enough to
definitely
old enough to remember
and
that.
As opposed to if parents are not being responsible. And I think that those are the kinds of nuanced things, because like you said, children do things. I personal story. When someone burglarized my house in Baltimore, okay, and the young man got caught, one of two, both of them got caught. Young man, he was a teenager. Both of them were teenagers. They had him in the holding pen. I'm there at the police station, and the mother comes in, business suit, suitcase, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And she looks at him and then looks at me and then does a double take because she recognized me from television. And she said, "You are a stupid Maryland farmer." Okay? She said, that's what she said. And she said, not only are you out here doing wrong, but you don't know who you're doing wrong to, because you robbed the TV man's house. Okay? Do I hold her responsible? I didn't. Because like you said, our children do stuff.
I mean, this gets directly to the point that the caller said. You're going to have a lot of parents in court having to answer for bad decisions that their kids make. And I have sympathy for that, again, I'm a parent of 4 children. I'm hoping I'm never in this situation. I have 4 children.
Wow,
okay. But I'm afraid. I have three young black boys that I know a system's already going to be looking at them sideways. So I'm praying that I can keep them on the straight and narrow, that I'm never in a position where I have to, I don't know, concern myself with them doing that. I'm hoping that this is what happens. But every situation is so different, and there's just a difference to me if, in the case of what you're talking about, you're saying that this child was calling out for help, but the mother says, I didn't believe he would do it. What parent believes that your child is going to go out and do something like this?
It's true.
Most parents are not ever thinking your children are going to go that far. We don't think they have it in them.
Yeah.
We genuinely do. My grandmother, I had an uncle who had various interactions with the criminal justice system. She still found that hard to believe, right? It just wasn't how she was wired, because that's her baby, and she raised that boy. And she raised the boy who wouldn't do those things, right? She might genuinely have believed he never would have done that. Is that negligence? I don't know. I mean, that's...
Let me go to the phone lines real quick. Gregory calling from Sacramento. Thanks for calling, Gregory. What's on your mind?
Good evening, Mr. Fisher. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I just wanted to say that I came up during a time when growing up as a kid, the neighborhood bully will beat you up, and mom or dad were like, no, you're going to go outside and fight this kid and defend yourself. But on the other hand, I have a question for you guys.
Go ahead, quickly.
What recourse do we have to discipline our kids? Because it's hard for us to discipline and teach our kids not to do the things that they're doing, so that we don't end up in a situation as parents or being parents who fail to take care of our kids.
Sam?
That's a deep question, and I think to get at the root of the answer to that question, we have to look at how society frames situations like this as individual moral failings rather than as symptoms of situations that affect the collective. We're talking about a time when inflation's high, when people are working 2-3 jobs at a time, when kids are hungry, and all of this snowballs into that, in addition to social media and just, the level of the music, the vibration of the music, really bringing kids into, a mind state where they're just doing any and everything. We're talking about this being a recipe for disaster, and yet it falls all on parents who are just trying to put food on the table, make sure the rent and mortgage is paid, and everything else. And, they might have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kids, but oftentimes, they might not be able to keep tabs on them. And it's not because they're negligent. It's just that we are all human beings, and that the way that this country is framed, there are no longer communities. There are no longer neighborhoods. People are so isolated. You can't even discipline somebody else's kid without pushback, And to add to that, the government wants to impose, itself in family affairs and penalize parents for the conditions that the government set. So, to answer your question, we have to indict the very people who created this system that makes us, individualistic and takes us away from community. Like, that's it by the end of the day. No other way to go about it.
I think he answered your question very well, Gregory.
Yes, he did. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. Real quick, let me go to Daryl calling from Maryland. Daryl, thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
Good evening, guys, and thanks for accepting my call.
Sure.
Well, you guys kind of moved me off my position a little bit, because I felt that the crime committed by teenagers actually leave the home and go out into the street, and I felt that there should be some type of marginal accountability for the household to, as you said, it's 11 o'clock, where is your child?
Mm-hmm.
So I understand all the social conditions and the economic conditions and all the things that occur, but I think if we could get parents to be conscious of where their kids are at a particular time of the evening, I believe it's going to mathematically take out a segment of what's occurring out here on the street.
Okay. Real quick.
I'm gonna go ahead and say I was a straight A student in high school, played sports, snuck out of the house. My parents had no idea. Took my parents' car. Took my dad's car. I would leave the garage door open so that at a time I would time it so that it would coincide with some noise in the house so they wouldn't realize the garage would be open. And then, I use my smarts to figure out how to outsmart what I believe to be outsmarting my parents. And sometimes that probably worked, right? You know, they had no reason to think that their straight A student son who was in the National Honor Society doing all that was out here acting a fool, taking their car to go do things. But I did that. And technically speaking, you would consider me a model kid. So if even the model kids are out here doing things that my parents had no earthly idea I was doing, or engaging in things that could have got me in trouble in any capacity, like this penalizes a certain population, even though everybody's doing this. This is a kids are gonna be kids, right? Kids are gonna be kids. Unfortunately, that's what growth and all that stuff is about.
But like we hear and you hear and you hear, Sam, when we talk about crime in D.C., and we were going to hear it tonight too. Where are the parents? Everybody says that.
It's the fallback.
Yeah.
It's the fallback because people don't know how to answer that. It's
right.
Not,
that's
not
true.
wrong, but it's also not the whole story. It's not everything.
It definitely
and it's
isn't.
a cop-out too, because it's like, well, the kid did something wrong. The parent should have knew where that parent was. But all of us who are parents have had those moments where you lose your kids.
Yes. Yeah.
It happens to all of us. You look up for 1 second, your kid is gone. Now what happens when that kid is smart enough to figure out they want to get out of the house, sneak out to go do something they shouldn't be doing? Kids across this nation of ours always get in trouble for being somewhere they shouldn't be that we don't know. It happens to parents from every socioeconomic status. It happens.
Yeah. Let us hope that in the happening that they're not out there killing people, and that is the hope. I want to move to this next topic. We will be getting to your phone calls, so just hang on, but I do need to move on. This is a big deal where the Department of Justice has proposed major changes to state-run victims' compensation, criminal victims' compensation. The Associated Press did an investigative story about this last year, where black victims of color, were disproportionately not receiving compensation because they may have been subjectively thought to have contributed to their own victimization. This is a big deal, Sam, and big up for journalism, but more broadly, once again, this is a systemic, issue that at least appears now to be headed for correction.
I wanted to pull up what the D.C. courts had for stipulations as far as who qualifies for compensation as victims. I'm unable to, but what I recollect reading earlier was that those who qualify could not have provoked the crime that was committed against them, or they could not have been involved in some way. And to your point, Harold, oftentimes, and I've learned this in speaking with activists, organizers in D.C., securing funds for victim services is often difficult because people who have crimes perpetrated against them might have records, or they might already be in the crosshairs of the police, so. And if you go to the ONE's office, the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, and shout out to the late Linda Harley Harper, she was the director of that when they did Building Blocks, which wasn't too successful, unfortunately. They narrowed down the amount of people who are committing crime or who are having crime against them to a very few. It's a very negligible number. We have people who are repeat offenders or people who are likely to be victims. So you really can't differentiate between the two when you talk about victim services, and just doing that perpetuates stereotypes about black people.
Yeah, absolutely. And what if you live in a high crime community?
Exactly.
Okay, is that, and then if somebody breaks into your house, why wouldn't you? I'm just, that's a hypothetical. If you are a sex worker, but then you become a victim of sexual assault, should you not receive services? If you have a criminal record, all right, but you are, just a working stiff. But there are still folks out there who don't like you because of what you used to do. But now, you're working a trade. You're a bricklayer on a construction site, and somebody comes up and shoots you from something that happened years ago. You should still have services.
Yeah. Every so often I read something that actually sounds like a correction that needs to be made. And it's like, okay, this addresses, and I'm assuming this does or will have some impact positively for those people who have been, unfortunately jobbed out of millions of dollars based on the amount of people that I saw that was available to them that they should have qualified for. So, if the DOJ, every so often,
they get it right.
Every so often, it seems like they get it right. And I'm hoping the, as you said earlier, impact versus intent. I'm hoping that actually works itself out, because if the fund is there and you were eligible for it, and so I hate language like that. The whole like you may have provoked your own crime. Like what does that even mean? Like if I slap you first and then you shoot me in the leg, like. Is it my fault? Like, you had to shoot me. We could have slapped me back. Like, we could just be fighting people. But now it's going to a level that it wasn't supposed to go to. Exactly. Now, all of a sudden, I'm the reason why this happened. Like, I mean, maybe I am, but, maybe there's some other stuff to it. But for the purposes of getting money for funds that exist and things like that, like, I hate ambiguity. I hate such ambiguity in all this stuff. It really bothers me. So, assuming this actually works the way it's supposed to, that actually brings me some level of like, this is how you correct a problem.
Hopefully. Yeah, and to be clear, this is the Department of Justice talking about this happening nationwide. They did call out certain states, I believe it was South Dakota and Iowa and some other places, but.
Probably places you expect this stuff to happen.
Exactly.
Probably the places where you expect it to be.
Yeah, there
probably
it is.
Probably a southern rim of states down there with these things. As a southerner, let's be real. Like it's
Okay. Let me go back to the phone lines. 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. Arthur calling from D.C. Thanks for calling, Arthur. What's on your mind?
Yeah, quite a bit, but I'm going to just take a couple of seconds. First of all, we've lost respect.
What's that now?
And I said, first of all, we have lost respect for everything. The parents are worse than the kids. There's no real parenting on the positive side today. They're teaching the kids the negative things. We have done this. We have done that. We've done everything that we can to do negative things. Now, once you decide to rescue or recruit the youngers, you have to have some type of plan of recruitment and really set it up. This city, Washington, D.C., have had some of the greatest plans for the kids. And the reason I say that, most of the kids in this city have done well.
Yeah.
Through these plans. We have a few kids that have committed crimes. They have done things out of the ordinary because they have parenting.
Wrap it up real quick, Arthur. Finish your point. I've got to move on here.
Well, the point is we need more positive thinking. We need real justification for these kids and criminals. I mean, you have to prosecute them. And a lot of people say, well, you can't you just send people to jail. Well, they're not on the streets.
Yeah.
They can't commit a crime if they're not on the streets.
Yeah. Arthur, thank you so much. There's that sick and tired of being sick and tired kind of thing again. Mr. P, calling from Baltimore. Thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
Yes, how you doing?
Sure.
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure thing.
Reparations and compensation for us that's a game. It's not going to happen. Yeah, the funds are there. Everybody's doing an investigation. Everybody's doing research with the money that's out there for us. But it's like we got to fight to get that done, you know. And then it takes so long for it to get done. You know, by then, kids are going to prison. Parents are trying to take responsibility for the kids, but the respiration and compensation, it seems like those two are the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not for.
Yeah. Fred, thank you so, Mr. P, I should say, thank you so much. I think he meant reparations, but yeah, thank you so much. I need to tackle these other two topics real quick. Back to D.C. The D.C. Council passing a law that eliminates the divorce waiting period. This is, particularly important for spouses who are trying to get away from partners who may be physically abusing them, a domestic violence situation. Your thoughts about that, Panama?
Look, I hope I never have to concern myself with
Let us hope not.
divorce.
Let's hope that you just hang in there.
I love my wife very much, and I'm happy to be here. With that said, if this ever goes wrong, I'm glad this isn't a long, drawn-out process. But I also think these things should be. Look, it takes nothing to get married and everything to get divorced. That is one of the craziest things ever. I feel like you should have to work harder to get married than you should to get divorced. But that's just me. So, specifically for the communities targeted for the reason for this, then absolutely, this is nothing but a win. And for all those people that this unintentionally helps on the other side of this, congratulations. Now you don't have to stay tied to somebody you can't stand for longer than you need to.
Yeah. Sam?
I would like to look back around the circumstances of the original law. What compelled that? What inspired that? I think all in all, this speaks to the spirit of change and just how, over time we got to re-examine the laws that are on the books. And D.C. is a really big city as far as it, relates to activism and just people organizing. So you definitely got to shout out the organizers that were in the ears of the council members and who really pushed them to legislate something like this. So, I think it's a big testament to that.
I would also say, even outside of the domestic violence issue, which I think is critically important, but having done it, when it's time to go, it's time to go. And if they're, and I think you shouldn't force people to live together who don't want to be together.
Prolonging the inevitable for what purpose? What purpose does that serve?
Yeah, just let it go. Okay, real quick. Beer and wine in Maryland grocery stores, Sam, yay or nay?
Nay.
Why nay?
Transparency moment. I haven't had a drink like going on 7 years.
Congratulations.
And I frequent areas in my work where I see a great proliferation of liquor stores. And I see people with what my mom calls a mind your business bag, the black bags. She calls it the mind your business bag. So like when you see somebody walking in the middle of the day with the black bag,
right?
There's something in there that's like 40 proof or something like that, So, I'm just very sensitive to, alcohol, beer. Now, mind you, people are free to do what they want. I understand, but it doesn't have to be everywhere. And that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, understood.
I mean, if I respect that.
Yes, sir.
I, on the other hand, feel like if I can buy it on Saturday and Monday, then Sunday is really just a formality. So why not? Plus, you're increasing revenue. We live in an area that's so tiny. You can just cross the line to go into D.C. I definitely have bought liquor from places in D.C. So, and I live in D.C., so I guess it ain't none of my business. This is my business. But, at the same time, I don't even understand why some of these things exist to begin with.
Well, I mean, I believe you can do it in Virginia, and
VA definitely.
Yeah,
I've seen it.
I live in Maryland.
It's got to be inconvenient.
No, it's not, because I just go on Saturday.
You go on Saturday, you stock up. Yeah, Sunday's coming, right?
Right, and and I don't know whether or not you're going to. Can
you go to a bar and buy a drink on Sunday?
You can.
You can do that too. What is the point of? It sounds like catching up with what's already happening.
Yeah, and. And for the highbrow drinkers, like, are you going to get that in? Are you going to get that in the grocery store? No, I need to, I need to go to the liquor boutique,
right?
The barbecue.
Everybody ain't a highbrow drinker though. Sometimes you need what's in that aisle.
You need to get
sometimes you need that aisle.
Yeah, that's right for those. But I get it. It's I don't know. I just don't see what the big deal is. Monday through Saturday, in your community, or if you go where you need to go, then I don't know. But again, I commend you, Sam, on your sobriety.
Yes, sir.
Because that's real. That's very, very real. Panama Jackson, Sam P.K. Collins, thank you both for talking to us. I really appreciate it. Like you said, peace and blessings. We're going to need a whole lot of that as we move forward. So finally tonight, once again, more thoughts about the D.C. crime bill. Every time we hear from the advocates, the elected officials, even WHUR listeners, we hear what they don't like about the D.C. crime bill. What they believe will not work. Well, that side of the argument is important, very important. But what also is important is hearing about what you think will work, not just long-term, but right now. We really need the ingredients for the secret sauce. Someone has to raise a hand and put some tough, thoughtful suggestions in the hat. There's too much blood in the streets. There are too many people dying. That's the Daily Drum for this Wednesday, February 7th. I'm Harold Fisher. Good night.
This program was produced by WHUT and made possible by contributions from viewers like you. For more information on this program or any other program, please visit our website at WHUT.org. Thank you.